Good morning, fellow brethren. Uh, Good to see you again. It's been a while since I've been on air. So we just continue with our remember my role as the safety officer in the body of Christ. So today is episode 5, and the topic is lawlessness. So according to the scriptures, what is lawlessness? So we see in Matthew 7, verse 23, it says, "And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." So lawlessness is a term which you see in various scriptures, especially in the New Testament. But you shall see as I explain more illustrations, you can also see in the Old Testament. From the start, from the Adamic sin in Genesis. So, Genesis 3, when we were tempted and we disobeyed God. I think I also talked about in a certain episode of when you talk of Shema, is written in Deuteronomy, according to Deuteronomy 6, verse 4 to 5, where God is telling us to obey and act according to his will. So today, as I said, the topic is on lawlessness, and I've already given you from Matthew 7 to 23. And if you look at, if you read Romans 6, verse 15 to 9, it says, "What then shall we sin because we are not under law but under grace? Certainly not. Do you not know that to whom you present yourself slaves to obey, you are that one slaves whom you obey, whether of sin leading to death or of obedience leading to righteousness? But God, he thanked that though you were slaves of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that a form of doctrine to what you were delivered. And having been set free from sin, you became slaves of righteousness. I speak in human terms because of the weakness of your flesh. For just as you present your members as slaves of uncleanness and of lawlessness, leading to more lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves of righteousness, of holiness." So this is Romans. Um, so I've already given on Facebook. There are several other verses you can look into. Matthew 24, verse 9 to 14, where Jesus is talking about the times of where he's going to deliver. Let me just read it. "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come." So that's according to Matthew. Then Matthew 13, verse 41 to 43, it says, "The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all that offend and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteousness will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has uh, Okay, this is he who hears, let him hear." So that was Jesus in the gospel. So now let's look at what is considered lawlessness by God. Um, so from my study, lawlessness according to God is going against His will. If you look at the Lord's Prayer, we talk about, like you say, "Let your will be done." So it's whenever you go against his will, that's a form of lawlessness. Of course, people look at the commandments, look at the Ten Commandments. These are laws uh, put onto us because of our lawlessness. So we're going against his will from the word go, from Genesis. If you look at how Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they lost trust. So lawlessness also looks at breaking those laws, the supreme laws of God, and the covenants so there are three main words that are used in the Bible that describe lawlessness. These words that describes lawlessness, the most common one is sin, then there is iniquity and transgression. So what is sin? So because the Bible, of course, we know most of us have read in our own languages, but God's language, it's started with Hebrew, then Aramaic and Greek. So the Hebrew is in the Old Testament, a bit of Aramaic uh, when he was talking with the prophets, and then there is Greek, the Greek language. So the translation, some of these words, they may not, you may not understand what. So I'm now going to let's consider these types of lawlessness, because these words, they may be used interchangeably in English, but in terms of where they originated, they mean different variations of lawlessness. So what is sin? Sin, there is a word used in Hebrew is kata, then in Greek is hamatia. This is, what does this mean? It's missing the mark or goal or destination, um, or moral failure. So, in a nutshell, it's a moral failure. Then, according to Romans 3, verse 20, you see, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So, we fail to that mark. What is the mark? Is the glory of God. We fail to glorify, to come to the glory of God. Why is that so? So, all right, failure to love God and fellow human beings. Uh, that according to when I was researching what is this failure, then failure to be God's image. When you look at what's the glory of God, so God created that in His image. So we are failing to be God's image, um, and this is first illustrated by the behavior of Cain in Genesis 4. The word kata is first used by God Himself when He questioned Cain in verse 7. Here we see that sin is a deep selfish desire or urge by acting at our own benefits at the expense of others. That's what Cain, which led to him actually killing his brother. So that is what we do whenever you have that deep-seated selfish desire. Which it goes against the will of God. Selfish desire means what you want only, not what others feel or what God wants. So whenever becomes a sin, becomes a failure, we miss the mark or the goal or the glory of God through that. When we undergo that. As Paul puts it, we are slaves to sin. This if you read Romans 6, I think it's verse 6. The things I don't want to do, that's what I do. That's if you read again Romans 7, verse 15 to 16. So our inability to judge whether we are succeeding or failing, it is sin. When we are unable to judge whether, so because we are so much engulfed in our selfish desires, we fail to judge whether we are succeeding. And I think these things we see when we our own selfish desires. That's normally when we maybe we're ingressing to possessions, things like that. We don't. There are people out there, maybe the poor, they want something, but we feel that you just want what you want. Just like what happened with Cain, he was just jealous. So there are these things even last. You see, so those are things which lead us to because Jesus actually came into further to explain more on the laws that way. They are just not a manifestation on the physical. That's where he was talking of the Sadducees and the Pharisees. When he talked about these Sadducees and Pharisees, I think you realize that he was talking in a sense of what we do. We abide by the law. We call it legalism, where we are on the brink, but we look at loopholes. We are on the physical, like for instance, when you look at uh, fornication or adultery in the physical, as human beings, we think that to sin only it is when we actually do it in the physical, but even in the spiritual. That's why things like pornography and are also harmful. Or even just imagining when you are looking at especially this is very dangerous, especially for us men, uh, when we have such desires. So that's remember, as I said, these are selfish desires. We are lasting. The last, according to Jesus, is a sin. So that's an explanation of sin according to the word kata or hamatia. So the next word is iniquity. Again, this form of lawlessness in Hebrew is called avon or anomia. It comes from the word ava, which means to be crooked or bent or twisted. You can refer to Psalms 38, verse 6. So a distortion of what is meant to be perfect comes to mind. So a distortion. So there are things which we already we encounter in our daily lives, like it has become more like we have normalized it, like in this modern day where you talk of things like corruption. We always hear this inquisitions on corruption, and the most common one is inequality in the society. Inequality. That's why when we talk of to be righteous, because that's the opposite of being lawlessness. You have to be righteous. We talk of you need to look after the poor, those who don't have. You give to those who ask. You also open to those who don't have shelter. You give food. You give shelter. All those things. That's what Jesus illustrated when he was talking. Remember in Matthew 25, if you read verse 31 to 46, when he was talking of the end times. So we need to look into those things. So also, when you look at corruption, inequality, and injustice from the Old Testament, you can also refer to Isaiah 59, verse 12 to 14. So crooked is the new straight anyway in this new modern world. I think you understand, especially in our countries, or in this. Those who have in Zimbabwe or in South Africa or any other country in there, you feel people like corruption is part of us, and everyone is doing it somehow, uh, be it bribery or whatever. But it has become, the crooked is now it's more like a straight thing, but according to God, that is not right. That is lawlessness. It's a form of evil. So the consequence of Avon is retaliation and punishment by the wronged. Remember, when you are being corrupt to others, I think those who have encountered, be it the police, they want to be given something. You just have, there's a form of retaliation which always emanates from the community. I think again you can see this form of lawlessness even in this countries where people are no longer abiding to what there are so many laws that are being written. We have lost count. They're trying to write, but people are no longer listening. So it's more of a retaliation. People are just indifferent to whatever. Even if they put laws that they are not supposed to use, you just see people are just exchanging. So that's this has led to those who are. If you are the one who is crooked, you will find yourself in chains because of this type of lawless iniquity, and uh, God gives people the dignity of carrying their iniquity through punishment. So, being corrupt, inequality, and injustice, you find that when you are the one who is doing those things, there's a point in time where people Those who are you are suppressing or oppressing, they will retaliate. I think you find iniquity also comes when you look at even warfare, civil strife, things like that. Even in a famine, people when they people just I think you can tell with the demonstrations if it's in South Africa, it's because of this inequality which it is so much rampant. If you look at those who have the world, they have amassed wealth, others that don't have. So those who don't have, they end up just getting land for free. They build whatever they want. So at the end of the day, it becomes a lawless society because of iniquity, which have brought upon ourselves. So what is God saying now? Remember, God also He has in from the Old Testament. He actually also as He also punished in forms. If you look at from the times of Noah, that flood, it was because of iniquity, and you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, it was because of lawlessness. Again, you see. So, but what is God saying now? Because we are talking of now. Was God remember? Because of the we are living in the messianic times. He already came to some 2,000 years back. That's Jesus Christ. So God, being a so loving, is prepared to carry the avon, right, the iniquity of corruption of people as a show of generosity by His forgiveness. He's a forgiving God. I think you see that is why also He entails us to forgive others. Because remember, from His laws, even from the Lord's Prayer, you can tell Jesus came to explain properly what it means to forgive. If God can forgive, why is it that we fail to forgive? So it's also a form of lawlessness to not to forgive your neighbors. This I'm telling you, fellow brethren, you should forgive. Don't dwell on the past. Forgive, move on. Be it your partner who has wronged you, be it even if they've done something which is so bad, be it adultery, or you should learn to forgive. That's what God is telling us. That's His will. That is what He is telling us to do. So through Jesus, God invites us to be whole humans once again, as upright people walking and working with God and other fellow human beings. So even in the church here, we are talking of. That's why I'm talking of. He talks of when he was asked how many times are we supposed to forgive. You, in a sense, you can't say that's on its own. When you try to multiply that the number of times that you are supposed to, it is an illustration that you are not supposed to even dwell on even thinking of, because when you are now counting, it means you have not forgiven. So it's very clear. You see, you have to forgive to up to infinity, like Him. He's an everlasting God who loves us with an agape love. So we should show the same, not this emotional love, that we should be people who are so loving, according to what agape means, the way God loves us. He is, how many times has He forgiven us? He has shown so much patience. Even though we are living in this church age, the church age is where, remember, God, Jesus already came and showed us the way. So we are the ones we are supposed to be ready for His second coming in His judgment. So, so that's the lawlessness. Number two is which I have just explained, the avon or iniquity or anomia in Greek. So the third word now, which we also see even in the some when you the Lord's prayer is you say you trespass against us, or transgression. Yeah, so the word in Hebrew is pesha. So pesha is also in Greek is paraptoma. It basically means, because if you look at when you read these words in English, you may not understand what exactly was is a translation, but that's why I'm looking at the Hebrew meaning. Uh, there may be a hidden meaning which we need to learn. So Pesha, comes from the word Pasha. So this a Hebrew word, it means breaking of agreement or trust. This is illustrated from the onset, of course, by Adam and Eve. in Genesis 3, when they disobeyed God's instructions. Remember that tree of knowledge. So they ate that apple, and that led to the Adamic sin. And the other, there are so many illustrations from when you look at the Israelites, and they were always breaking God's trust. This we now look at the covenant now. There's a covenant. Then on a day-to-day basis, on we always break. We sometimes find ourselves, myself included. I hope God will help us on that one. We break someone's trust somehow, by if it's whether in the family, friends, colleagues at work, or by either stealing, gossiping, jealousy, lying, committing violence. There are so many ways of breaking someone's trust. And in a relationship, like those who are myself married, those who are married, you find yourself, you break someone's trust through the same. But the main one, especially for in couples, those married, it's which will lead, especially when we talk of adultery. Even as I said, when people, when they are hiding, whether they are doing it on their phones and watching pornography, are breaking someone's trust. Because remember, I said on the spiritual, in the spirit, God does not want us to commit adultery, whether it's in the physical or in the spirit. Let's not be like Pharisees who dwell on the physical. In the spirit, you should also mostly be powerful in the spirit. As men, let's be very careful. Let's not say, no, we are doing tourism. We're just watching. Don't look at someone's wife with a desire, breaking that neighbor's trust by just doing that, because you're committing adultery, right? It's rape, because we've not even agreed, and it is the worst part about things that are in the spirit. They are not seen by the physical eye, and some of our fellow brethren will not be able to help in such scenario. So it is more dangerous in this. That's why Jesus taught in that sense that you should, in hyperbole, he said you should remove the eye so that you don't see. So let's be careful when we are dealing with it. So transgression is a form is whereby you are talking of to a relationship, as you have seen, it's breaking our agreement. So the most is we break whenever you break an agreement with another human being. Remember, we are all in God's image. You have also broken God's trust, and we as human beings, we are so much led by this new age, whatever things that we are doing, be it even in entertainment, what we watch, some of these things, be it witchcraft, science fiction, these soap operas, we watch homosexuality on perversion, sexual perversion, people kissing each other, things like I don't know what do you call this, the Big Brother or something. Those things that they create as if it's a good thing. We are creating our own laws. That's lawlessness. Even on a national scale, I'm not of the policymaker, whether they make it as a law that you should marry another man or whatever. It's lawlessness. Still, you are breaking God's trust. He did not say us. So according to it, we are not supposed to do that. You understand? So we are taking things that are evil and making them good. That's breaking God's trust. So, fellow brethren, Jesus was trustworthy on our behalf. He is still trustworthy on our behalf. God took responsibility for our betrayal so as to be a new creation that is loving, faithful, trustworthy, and with integrity. That's what God wants. So let's not be dwell on lawlessness. As a safety net, let's make sure that we are people who are trustworthy, faithful, loving, and with integrity. That's what God wants. So that's pesha or paraptoma, transgression. Now, as a final word, what does Matthew 25, according to, you can read that Matthew 25 from 31 to 46, in the final judgment, when the good shepherd will separate the sheep from the goats. This time is upon us. Let us be on the safe side by being law-abiding ambassadors of Christ as we prepare for the new kingdom where evil is no more. Is no more. Qatar, Avon, and Persia will cease to exist. So these are my last thing according to the word of God that I've researched, and I thank God for the time and for your listening. So to God be the glory. Those with ears have heard. Good morning.